Hello, my dear children. I hope you all enjoyed your winter vacation. Children, there are many animals found on earth. Some are domestic animals, whereas others are wild animals. People make use of domestic animals. But if I tell you that some people make wild animals as their companions, do you feel strange? Some people tame wild animals like lion, giraffe, snake, which means they take care of these animals. A person has a hobby to learn more about these animals. You know, to save and take care of these animals is called conservation of animals. Do you think, children, is it easy to tame a wild animal? No, it is a very difficult task. There is a big risk of life of the person. Today, you are going to learn about the life of chimpanzees through the writings of a famous personality, Jane Goodall. From your literature book, the title of the chapter is Jane and the Chimps. Jane Goodall loved animals. As a child, she loved watching animals for hours. She wanted to know everything about them, what they eat, and how they live. When Jane Goodall was small, she wanted to know the lifestyle of the animals. After finishing school, Jane went to Africa for work. Her job was to watch chimpanzees and write about them. So she moved to Gombe, where the chimps lived. After finishing the school studies, Jane found her choice of work. She had to know more about chimpanzees and pen down their lifestyle. So she went to Gombe in Africa because the chimpanzees lived there. Every morning, Jane walked into the forest, climbed to a peak, and looked for chimps. I want to learn new things about them, she wrote in her diary. Every day in the morning, Jane went to the forest and climbed to the highest point of the mountain. Children, this is the peak. She used to sit here and watch the activities of the chimpanzees. She was so anxious that she started writing diary in order to note her achievements. In the beginning, the chimps stayed away from Jane. Sometimes she couldn't see them for many days. She could only hear their pant-hoot calls to one another. But the chimps too were watching Jane. After a few weeks, the chimps slowly let Jane see them. Jane was very excited. She gave each chimp a different name. To her, every chimp was special. When Jane started her work, initially the chimpanzees were away from her because maybe they were afraid of being killed by Jane, or they may have wondered who is the new creature among them. Children, don't you feel this happens with us also? It takes time to adjust with the new member in our company. Yes, this was the same case with these chimpanzees. Jane could only hear the sound made by them.
Slowly and gradually, the chimps were frequently seen by Jane. Jane was so excited that she gave each chimp a special name, a different name, because every chimp was different from each other. Then, one day, a chimp with a grey beard came close to Jane. She had named him David Greybeard. Jane offered him bananas. David Greybeard took bananas from my hands. She wrote in her diary that day. Children, I'm going to tell you something very interesting. As males have beard on their face and it turns grey when they grow old. In the same way, chimpanzees who are old in age have grey beard. This grey-beard chimp came close to Jane. She gave him a special name as David Greybeard. She offered him bananas, which were accepted by him. Jane was so happy and excited that at least one of the chimps accepted her as friend. This was the biggest achievement of Jane, which she noted in her diary. David Greybeard took bananas from my hands. Jane learned many new things about chimps. She found out that chimps could make and use tools. Before this, nobody knew that wild animals made tools. She saw David Greybeard eat meat. Before this, everybody thought chimps only ate plants. She also saw that David Greybeard was eating meat. Before this, people thought that chimpanzees only eat plants. So, children, we can say that chimpanzees are omnivorous animals, means they eat plants as well as flesh of other animals. Slowly, the chimps let Jane come even closer. They even let her sit among them. Chimps all around me? What a day, she wrote. Now, by this time, the other chimpanzees were also familiar with Jane. Jane could sit in the middle with them. She was so happy that she mentioned this in her diary. Chimps all around me, what a day. Jane was in habit, children, to note the special moments in the diary. For years, Jane spent most of her time among the chimps. She watched the chimps when they were happy. She saw them hold hands, hug, kiss, and laugh, just like people. Jane watched the chimps when they were angry or scared. She even saw them fight, but she kept out of the way. Now, at this point of time, Jane saw the chimps closely and learnt more about them. She found that chimpanzees were like people, sitting in groups. They could laugh, hug, kiss, and they were happy with each other. They were friendly with each other. They could even be frightened, and at times they fought. They were angry. At this moment, Jane did not come close to these chimps. She was away from them. She could see them far away fighting with each other. At the same time, forests in Africa were being cut down and animals were losing their homes. Jane's friends were in danger. So Jane left Gombe and traveled all over the world. She asked people to help save the chimps and the forests. Here came the situation when people were cutting down forests in Africa and chimps were losing their homes. Therefore, Jane traveled round the world and she gave the message to save the forests. Children, you know, conservation of forest is important because forest is the place where wild animals live. It is our duty to save them. These different species of animals add beauty to the earth. So, we should save the forests and the animals. Jane returned to Gombe whenever she could. She watched and listened again to her friends in the forest. Jane came back to Gombe whenever she could get the chance to meet the chimps. She watched them and listened to them who were her friends in the forest. Now, you know, children, Jane has opened an organization called Roots and Shoots to spread awareness towards these animals among people. Children, I hope you understood the story and the life of Jane Goodall with the chimpanzees. Now, try to answer these questions. We'll discuss them in the online class tomorrow. What do you learn about the life of Jane Goodall from the story? Why Jane Goodall noted her achievements in the diary? What problems Jane might have faced before she came closer to the chimpanzees? Thank you, children.